You dare threaten her life?
I dare anything! I am Skeletor!
Imagine a scene where ordinary humans in a small American town witness the impossible. The fabric of reality tears open before their eyes, and through this cosmic doorway steps a muscular warrior with a gleaming sword.
You will no longer stand between me!
Pursued by soldiers in futuristic armor. This isn't science fiction. It's suburban New Jersey. When Masters of the Universe crashed into theaters in 1987, it represented one of the boldest gambles in film history.
The war is over.
Translating the wildly popular animated series and toy line into a live-action spectacle. The late 1980s existed at a unique cultural crossroads. Star Wars had redefined science fiction, Conan had revitalized sword and sorcery, and toy companies had mastered the art of transmedia storytelling. Into this landscape, Cannon Films, a studio known for low-budget action films, attempted something truly ambitious with its $22 million budget, which would be roughly $60 million today. The film grossed only $17 million domestically.
Give me one more chance, Lord Skeletor, and we will succeed. I am not in a giving vein this day.
Becoming a commercial disappointment that contributed to Cannon's eventual downfall. Yet, commercial failure doesn't always equal cultural insignificance. In fact, Masters of the Universe has evolved into something far more interesting than a mere box office hit might have been. It's become a fascinating time capsule, a film that attempted to bridge cosmic fantasy with Reagan-era America, delivering a unique hybrid that neither fully embraced nor completely abandoned its source material. In this video, we'll explore how Masters of the Universe transformed from a Saturday morning cartoon into a live-action sci-fi fantasy adventure.
Police! Nobody move!
We'll examine its bold creative choices, memorable performances, and how a film initially dismissed as a failed toy commercial has gradually earned recognition as a distinctive cult classic that continues to captivate fans decades later. The technical achievements of Masters of the Universe often go underappreciated when viewed through modern eyes. In an era before CGI dominated blockbuster filmmaking, the production team relied on practical effects, elaborate costumes, and detailed set design to bring Eternia to life. The opening sequence on Eternia showcases impressive miniature work and matte paintings that create a sense of cosmic scale. When Skeletor's forces storm the throne room, the combination of practical pyrotechnics, stunt choreography, and atmospheric lighting creates a siege sequence that still holds up remarkably well. The cinematography by Hanania Bayer deserves special recognition for its creative approach to visual storytelling within budget constraints. The film employs bold color contrasts, Eternia bathed in otherworldly blues and purples, Earth scenes dominated by warm oranges and yellows, creating a visual language that instantly communicates which world we're in. The use of smoke and dramatic backlighting throughout creates an atmosphere that bridges fantasy and film noir, particularly in scenes featuring Skeletor's throne room. These stylistic choices helped mask budget limitations while creating a distinct visual identity that differentiated the film from both typical 80s sci-fi and the animated series itself. The visual language of the film presents a fascinating fusion of aesthetics. Director Gary Goddard and production designer William Stout created two distinct worlds, the Baroque, operatic fantasy realm of Eternia and the mundane suburban landscapes of 1980s America. This visual contrast is most striking when Skeletor's troops invade the music store, their gleaming armor and exotic weaponry clashing against fluorescent lighting and ordinary shoppers. The costume design for Skeletor, with its skull-like prosthetics and flowing robes, creates a villain who's simultaneously theatrical and menacing, a character who would look at home in both a fantasy epic and a science fiction thriller. Production wasn't easy, with numerous challenges threatening to derail the project.
Go!
Canon Films was experiencing serious financial difficulties during filming, leading to budget cuts and a compressed shooting schedule. Sets had to be repurposed, and ambitious sequences were scaled back. The most notable compromise was minimizing scenes set on Eternia, shifting much of the action to Earth, a decision born of financial necessity rather than creative choice. Yet these limitations forced the team to innovate, focusing on character moments and practical effects that could be executed within their means. Perhaps the most interesting behind-the-scenes insight is Frank Langella's approach to Skeletor. Unlike many actors who might view a villain in a toy-based movie as beneath them, Langella embraced the role, seeing Skeletor as a tragic Shakespearean figure consumed by power. He insisted on taking the character seriously, bringing gravitas to lines that could have easily descended into camp. This decision elevated the entire production, giving the film an unexpected emotional core that resonates beyond its commercial origins.
You're champion.
The performances in Masters of the Universe range from surprisingly nuanced to charmingly campy, creating a unique ensemble that helps ground the fantastical premise. Dolph Lundgren as He-Man faced the formidable challenge of bringing a cartoon icon to life. While critics often point to his limited dialogue, reportedly reduced after struggling with English language lines, his physical presence and earnest delivery created a hero who felt both otherworldly and relatable. His genuine confusion when confronted with Earth culture leads to some of the film's most endearing moments. Meg Foster's portrayal of Evil Lynn deserves particular recognition as one of the film's most compelling elements. Her distinctive, almost otherworldly pale blue eyes, which are natural, not contact lenses, create an immediately memorable visual presence. Unlike many female villains of the era who relied on seduction as their primary characteristic, Foster's Evil Lynn is coldly intellectual and ambitious, with her own agenda that extends beyond mere loyalty to Skeletor. The subtle hints at her conflicted allegiance and independent motivations add unexpected depth to what could have been a one-dimensional henchwoman role. Foster accomplishes this largely through nonverbal acting, slight changes in expression that reveal calculations happening beneath Evil Lynn's composed exterior. Her performance exemplifies how a talented actor can elevate material beyond its origins. The human supporting cast provides much of the film's emotional grounding. John Cypher brings dignified gravitas to the role of Duncan, Man-at-Arms, while Chelsea Field's Tila balances warrior intensity with vulnerability. Billy Barty as Gwildor, a character created specifically for the film as a more practical alternative to the animated series' floating Orko, brings a surprising amount of pathos to what could have been merely comic relief. His performance conveys genuine regret for the chaos his cosmic key invention has unleashed, adding moral weight to the adventure. Frank Langella as Skeletor delivers what many consider the standout performance. Buried under prosthetics and makeup, Langella channels classical theatrical training into creating a villain of Shakespearean proportions. The scene where Skeletor finally achieves godlike power is unforgettable. His triumphant monologue, "I've become what you always feared I would," conveying both menace and a twisted sense of validation. This moment elevates the film beyond typical 80s fantasy fare, touching on themes of power corruption and obsession. A young Courtney Cox, years before Friends would make her a household name, brings surprising depth to Julie, our human protagonist. Her grief over her parents' death parallels He-Man's sense of responsibility for Eternia's fall, creating an emotional connection that grounds the fantastical elements. The quiet scene where Julie shares her parents' telescope with He-Man, bridging their two worlds through a shared moment of wonder, carries unexpected emotional weight in what could have been a purely action-driven story. The casting process itself yielded fascinating stories. Lundgren was cast primarily for his imposing physicality, having recently gained fame as Ivan Drago in Rocky IV. However, the production team was unprepared for his accent, leading to script revisions that minimized He-Man's dialogue. inadvertently creating a more mysterious, stoic hero. More surprising was Langella's enthusiasm for playing Skeletor. He reportedly took the role specifically because his son was a huge He-Man fan, approaching what could have been a throwaway villain role with remarkable commitment. This dedication transformed Skeletor from a cackling cartoon villain into a genuinely compelling antagonist with clear motivations and a twisted worldview. Critics initially savaged Masters of the Universe upon its 1987 release. The New York Times dismissed it as a colossal bore, while other reviews mocked its divergence from the animated series and labeled it a cynical toy commercial. With its poor box office performance, the film seemed destined for obscurity, particularly as it coincided with Canon Films' financial collapse. Yet something curious happened in the decades that followed, a gradual reappraisal that has transformed the film's reputation from commercial failure to cult favorite. The marketing campaign itself contributed to the film's troubled reception. Promotional materials promised spectacle on par with Star Wars, creating expectations the modest budget simply couldn't fulfill. Parents brought children expecting the colorful, lighthearted adventures of the cartoon series, only to encounter a darker, more atmospheric film with genuine moments of menace. Meanwhile, older audiences dismissed it as childish based solely on its toy line origins, creating a perfect storm of misaligned expectations that doomed its theatrical run. Adding to these challenges was the film's awkward timing in the cultural landscape. Released in the shadow of more sophisticated genre films like RoboCop and Predator, Masters of the Universe seemed tonally confused to contemporary audiences. The era of straightforward heroic fantasy was giving way to more complex, self-aware storytelling, leaving the film caught between eras, too mature for young He-Man fans, but too earnest for an increasingly cynical adult audience. Industry insiders viewed its failure as a warning about the risks of toy adaptations, a perspective that would discourage similar projects until the late 1990s. Perhaps most damaging was the behind-the-scenes drama that spilled into the press. Reports of Canon's financial troubles, last-minute budget cuts, and on-set tensions created a narrative of troubled production that colored critical reception. The planned sequel, teased in the film's final moments with Skeletor's return, became infamous in Hollywood as a project that collapsed days before production was set to begin, cementing the film's reputation as a financial disaster. The film faced significant backlash from devoted fans of the animated series who were disappointed by major departures from the source material. The absence of beloved characters like Battle Cat, Orko, and Man-at-Arms' iconic mustache became sticking points. Perhaps most controversial was the decision to set the majority of the film on Earth rather than Eternia, which many viewed as budget cutting that undermined the rich fantasy world of the original. These creative choices created a film that existed in an unusual middle ground, too different for hardcore fans, but too toy-based for general audiences. However, audience perception has evolved dramatically over time. What once seemed like weaknesses have been reinterpreted as bold creative choices. The film's earnest approach to its material, refusing to wink at the audience or undercut its fantasy elements with excessive humor, now feels refreshing in an era of self-referential blockbusters. Online communities have embraced the film's unique aesthetic. Part fantasy epic, part 80s sci-fi, part fish-out-of-water comedy, recognizing it as distinctly of its time, yet ambitiously reaching beyond typical toy adaptations. Sharp-eyed viewers have discovered numerous hidden details that reward repeated viewing. The Cosmic Key, a central plot device, features sound effects created by synthesizer pioneer Tom Scott. Several background characters on Eternia wear modified costumes from previous science fiction films, creating subtle visual connections to the wider genre. Perhaps most significant is that the film contains an early version of the Dark Reprise. Skeletor's triumphant speech near the film's climax deliberately echoes and perverts He-Man's iconic "I have the power" catchphrase, creating a thematic bookend that shows surprising narrative sophistication for what was dismissed as merely a toy commercial. The influence of Masters of the Universe extends far beyond its modest theatrical run, casting a long shadow over later toy-to-film adaptations. While it wasn't the commercial success studios hoped for, it provided a crucial lesson in adaptation philosophy: the importance of respecting source material while taking creative risks. This balance would later inform more successful adaptations like Transformers and G.I. Joe, which similarly had to translate distinctly toy-centric properties into coherent narratives. The film's ambitious fusion of science fiction and fantasy elements also prefigured the genre-blending approach that would eventually become commonplace in blockbuster filmmaking. Film historians and industry insiders now recognize the production as an important case study in the evolution of branded entertainment. Masters of the Universe arrived at a pivotal moment when studios were just beginning to understand how to translate transmedia properties to the big screen. Its struggles helped establish what would later become industry wisdom about maintaining core elements that fans expect while still crafting a cinematic experience. The film's troubled production and marketing challenges created valuable lessons that would inform later, more successful franchise launches, making it an unintentional but important pioneer in what would become Hollywood's dominant business model decades later. Despite its flaws, Masters of the Universe matters today because it represents a unique moment in film history, when the boundaries between toys, television, and cinema were still being defined. Its practical effects and handcrafted aesthetic have aged surprisingly well in an era dominated by CGI spectacle. The film's earnest approach to potentially silly material feels refreshingly sincere to modern viewers, accustomed to irony and self-referential humor. There's something genuinely charming about a film that commits so fully to its fantasy premise without constantly undermining it with knowing winks to the audience. The cultural significance of Masters of the Universe continues to evolve in surprising ways. The film has become a fixture of internet meme culture, with Skeletor's dramatic declarations and Lundgren's limited dialogue serving as perfect fodder for social media. Its distinctive visual style, neon lighting, fog machines, and chrome accents has experienced renewed appreciation amid the current nostalgia for 80s aesthetics. Even the film's notorious cosmic key, once mocked as a glorified synthesizer, now seems oddly prescient of our modern obsession with multi-purpose technological devices. Masters of the Universe isn't just a failed blockbuster or a nostalgic curiosity. It's a fascinating artifact that captures a pivotal moment in entertainment history. It represents the ambitious, sometimes reckless spirit of 80s filmmaking, when studios were willing to take genuine risks on unproven concepts. Its legacy lies not in box office numbers, but in its willingness to treat ostensibly childish material with genuine sincerity and creative ambition. In an era when cynicism often masquerades as sophistication, there's something genuinely refreshing about a film that believes so earnestly in its own fantasy. What do you think? Does Masters of the Universe deserve its cult status, or is it merely nostalgia clouding our judgment? Has its unique blend of fantasy and science fiction elements aged better than many of its contemporaries? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the cult classics that shaped our cinematic landscape. From commercial disappointments to cultural touchstones, we're exploring the films that found their audience long after the credits rolled.